Hi guys, welcome back to the channel, FPL Consult here, and today we're going to do the Game Week 13 wildcard video. So in this video, we're going to cover everything related to wildcarding in Game Week 13, the things I'm considering leading up to building the team. Alright, so if you guys do enjoy it and find it helpful, please do give it a like and also subscribe as well if you are new around here. We're trying to hit 3,000 subscribers before the World Cup, so please help me get there by subscribing. Alright, so we're going to start off this video by talking about the teams that we need to target with these remaining 4 game weeks, right? 13, 14, 15, and 16, right? Because from game week 16 onwards, right? After game week 16, essentially, we have that free, unlimited free transfers. So what we essentially reset, right? So we only need to consider these 4 game weeks, and on the screen right now are the 5 teams with the best fixture run, right, from game week 13 up till game week 16. Now, Man City, Liverpool, and Arsenal, we already knew, right? Leading up to, blank game week 12, we already said that we would want these players back in, right? Especially Arsenal and City players. We would want them back in once blank game week 12 is over, right? So if you're wildcarding in game week 13, you do have to take advantage of that, right? So as we can see, City, Liverpool, and Arsenal are at the top here with this fixture ticker, right? City with pretty much a sea of green fixtures, 3 home games, Brighton, Fulham, and Brentford in the next 4, and all the teams that they're playing, right? Even Brighton at home, I think they could really win maybe 3-4-0 there, right? You could see players like Foden, Haaland, Cancelo all returning, right? And then the rest are green fixtures: Leicester, Fulham, Brentford, right? So I really see some holes there, and we do have to jump on these assets immediately. Right, and then there's Liverpool with a really decent run, right? Nottingham Forest, Leeds, Spurs in game week 15 would be a tricky one, right? But with their rise in form, hopefully that they can bring that in, into the Tottenham game, and thereafter they can, perform quite well in that. And then Southampton at home as well. So good run for them. Arsenal as well, Southampton, Nottingham Forest, and Wolves in the next 4, right? With Chelsea in game week 15, that's probably the only difficult one. Plus, on top of that, we do have to consider as well, Arsenal and Manchester City are really, really close in the title race, right? They're not going to want to slip up at all. So I don't see a case of them, taking the easier games lightly, because I'm sure that they would want to, win every game leading up to the World Cup, right? Get themselves in the best position possible before the season restarts next year. So another 2 teams that I think we can consider targeting on a game week 13 wildcard is West Ham and Crystal Palace. Now, I don't think they're talked about a lot, but from game week 13 to 16, they actually have quite a decent run, right? Bournemouth, Crystal Palace, and Leicester all at home, right, for West Ham, and then Manchester United away in game week 14, probably the only tough one there, right? So you could see hauls there for Bowen, right? Some clean sheets there as well. So West Ham definitely a team that I would target. And lastly, Crystal Palace, Everton away, Southampton at home, West Ham away, and then Nottingham Forest away. Right, so really good fixtures for all these teams here. Ideally, I would want to have as many players as I can from these teams, right? But we would have to kind of manage the budget as well. So later on, we'll take a look at how we can do this with the team. Right? But I thought now it's important for us to take a look as well at the fixture crunch, right? Because coming into game week 13, from now onwards, there are a lot of games for all these teams involved here, right? So we're gonna take a look now at the fixture crunch, and how many days that teams have to recover. So with this graphic on the screen, do take note that it is the recovery periods that we're talking about here, not the fixture difficulty ratings, right? Obviously, teams like Nottingham Forest and Leeds, they're not going to be they're not going to be red fixtures because they are green fixtures, right? So it's important to note what the colors mean, and basically, the redder the fixture is, it would mean that leading up to that game, right, there isn't a lot of recovery time, right? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 based on the days, based on the color metric at the top there. Right, so if you take a look, Arsenal has the worst one, right, where they pretty much only have 2 days of recovery before every single Premier League match from game week 13 all the way up till 16. This includes their Europa League games, right? It also includes their EFL Cup game in between game week 15 and 16. Right, so essentially not a lot of rest time there, but even so, right, I still do think we need to take note that rotations of players could come in the different leagues, right? We saw in Arsenal's Europa Leagues recently, they've always played kind of their second team, right, in the Europa League. So I'm not too worried about that, all red fixtures for Arsenal there, right? Some other fixtures that have very little days of recovery before that, right? Man City have a very short recovery time before their Fulham game and Brentford game at home, which is the 15 and 16 fixture, right? And then Liverpool as well, right? After now we are at post game week 12 now, and coming into game week 13, they don't have a lot of rest time before the Nottingham Forest away game, right? They play Nottingham Forest pretty close after the West Ham game, right? And then, right, there's Leeds as well that follows very closely behind after their Champions League midweek game, right? And then Spurs is kind of the only game they have a little bit more breathing space, a little bit more rest for the players, but then that's a tough fixture for them, right? Tottenham away. And then Southampton at home, also one where, a lot of teams don't get a lot of rest. I think game week 16 is a game week where a lot of these teams here we see on the screen have an EFL Cup game in between 15 and 16. So in game week 16, they don't have a lot of rest time before that, right? So do have to take note as well. And then for West Ham, right, it's pretty much after the Bournemouth at home game with 4 days of rest. After that, it's just 2 days of rest throughout, right? They are also in the Europa League, right? And then for Crystal Palace, a little bit more of an easy, fixture run coming up for them because it is a lot more breathing space for them. They're not as involved in Europe, so only the EFL Cup game in game week in between 15 and 16 that's going to affect their Nottingham Forest away fixture. So we do have to take into account this recovery period, because what it essentially means is that they're going to be rotations. They're going to be players that are going to come into the starting 11 and out. And what we would want is the players that we are going to go for now in game week 13 to be nailed 90-minute starters in all of the Premier League games, right? So as I said just now earlier on, I think players, teams like Arsenal, right, where they kind of do a wholesale switch in Europa League versus the Premier League, right? I wouldn't be too worried there, right? Klopp already said, right, for Liverpool there would be some rotations there. We do have to take note, and we will have to take that risk into account when making our transfers. And as for Manchester City as well, right, we could see a little bit of rotation, but I'm not too worried if it's the Champions League games before the Premier League games, because they are pretty much secured in their Champions League position, right? So that's pretty much it for this slide, and let's now take a look at the next section. So for part of the Game Week 13 wildcard video as well, I thought it's important that we take a look at two key players that I think will be very, very important for every Game Week 13 wildcard, right? And that's Saka and Foden, right? So both of them are pretty much less than 20% owned at this point in time. So they could still present a little bit of differential value there, especially if they do mega hauls like maybe 15, 16 pointers. Even though they are more than 10% owned, these hauls can really still boost your rank. So I think Saka and Foden, they've been really, really important in their respective teams, right? Saka has been playing so well for Arsenal and kind of becoming a little bit like their talisman as well, right? And then Foden, of course, performing so much better than his first few games, right? And in recent times, we've seen also Foden get a lot more involved in the goals, right? He's a lot closer to the goal, especially when Gundogan doesn't play. I think it kind of helps his situation as well. He goes a lot closer to the goal because Gundogan, when he plays, takes up that space that Foden would essentially be in had Gundogan not played, right? So if you're a Foden owner, you probably don't want Gundogan to play because of how that affects his play, right? But let's take a look at the fixtures first, right? So 13 to 15, right? Pretty much clear fixtures for both sides apart from the Game Week 15 Chelsea away fixture for Saka, right? So if you are taking a look at the set and forget kind of options, right, from Game Week 13, right, Saka and Foden are pretty much the ideal kind of mid-price. They're not really premiums. They're all around the 8 mil price bracket, right? 7.9 for Saka, 8.3 for Foden, right? These price range are really, really good, especially even if we face any injuries for either of them. You could just do a swap to maybe Mason Mount. You could downgrade as well and upgrade somewhere else. So I really like it that these two players are at this price point as well, right? And then if you take a look at their statistics, right, this graphic right in the middle here, Foden actually outperformed Salah a little bit here, but what can we say when Manchester City has been scoring so many more goals, right, than the rest of the Premier League essentially, right? So Foden statistically faring a little bit better than Saka, right? Expected points, expected assists, expected goals, big chances, etc. But that's just basically the nature of how Man City are so attacking, right? So his stat figure is pretty much engulfing Saka, but Saka is comparatively doing quite okay considering that Arsenal are not as attacking as Man City, right? Man City do create a lot of chances, right? But given even so, right, even in Arsenal, Saka is pulling up good numbers for himself as well, right? So I really do think that Saka and Foden, both of them could benefit during this run from game week 13 to 16, right? Their statistics for the expected goals and expected assists per 90 as well are pretty close by, right? Expected goals of 0.35 per 90 for Saka, right? 0.34 per 90 for Foden, right? Pretty close by, right? And also the expected assists are quite respectable for both of them as well, right? So these two players I think are pretty much set and forget in all the game week 13 wildcard teams, right? For my own situation, I'm not wildcarding in game week 13, so I am actually going to have to make a decision, right? Whether I want to go for both of them or I prioritize one over the other. If I was to prioritize one, I probably would go for Foden, right? But those of you in a wildcard 13 situation, you are in kind of a dream situation where you can go for both, right? So if you are on a wildcard 13, I would really recommend going for Saka and Foden both in your game week 13 wildcard team. So with all these factors in mind, we can now start building the game week 13 wildcard team. Now this squad value is 101 million, right on the dot. If those of you who have a little bit more money, you can upgrade some players as well, right? Formation here is 4-4-2. Right, so we're gonna go with Guaita in goal, given that Crystal Palace's fixtures are pretty good, right? And as a keeper, I don't think we should go a little too expensive. There are only 4 game weeks left. I think we should kind of capitalize on all the attacking assets as well, and also the attacking defenders, which we'll talk about later, right? So Guaita 4.5 kind of enables that as well, right? Good fixtures. I think he's pretty much one of the main keeper choices that those of us who are on a wildcard 13 would go for, right? Then we have Ben White, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Cancelo, and Kehrer as the back four, right? So Ben White, Trent and Cancelo help us to cover all the good fixtures from these teams that we mentioned have good fixtures, right? Arsenal, Liverpool, and also Man City, right? Cancelo and Trent, of course, they have the attacking threat as well, right? Trent seems to be back fit as well, right? So they have good fixtures and a good run all the way up to game week 16. I'm thinking they could really bang here, right? And then Kehrer is only in this team for game week 13 because he has Bournemouth at home, and all the other players like Zuma, Dawson, they're all nursing a little bit of a knock here and there, right? Players like Soufal, we don't know whether he's going to play every game week, Emerson as well. So I think Kehrer seems like at 4.5, right? He seems like the one who's probably most nailed to start game week 13 at least, and that's when we would need him, right? Only for this team, you only need him for game week 13, right? After that, Trippier comes in, he's on the bench, but we'll go to the bench later, right? But Bournemouth at home for Kehrer, every chance of a clean sheet there. Right, then Salah, Martinelli, Saka, and Foden. I think this midfield 4 is pretty much going to be how every game week 13 World Cup could possibly look like, right? I think a lot of people will want Salah for this run, right? Given how he has bounced back, right? And then Martinelli and Saka to cover that Arsenal run of fixtures, especially since both of them as compared to Jesus, right? Jesus is on 4 yellow cards, so there could be a chance that he gets one more and misses out on another game, right? But both of them, Saka and Martinelli, at this point are still cheaper than Jesus, right? 6.7 for Martinelli and Saka at 7.9, right? So they're cheaper and I guess a little bit safer because of that suspension for Jesus as a possibility, right? So I go for both of them. Saka on penalties as well, right? So really, really good there. And then there's Foden, right, who plays Brighton at home, right? Ideally, I would really prefer Foden over Kevin De Bruyne, right? Some people are thinking about Kevin De Bruyne back in game week 13. I would personally go for Foden because he's 4 mil cheaper, right? And it allows upgrades elsewhere in the team which do really well, right? As you guys can see. And then up front, there's Haaland and Mitrovic, right? Mitrovic is probably going to be in the team from game week 13 and 14, and then 15 and 16 I'd probably swap to a Solanke if I was having this team, right? So if you analyze this team on a whole, you essentially have 2 Liverpool assets, right? That will probably start every week, right? You have 3 Arsenal assets and you have 3 Man City assets. Right? Apart from that, you have Guaita, Kehrer for this 1 game week, and Mitrovic. So really strong team here. And on the bench, there's Iverson, because I don't think that we would need a backup keeper for 4 game weeks. I don't think there's a necessity for that. And then there's Trippier as well, who's the first defender. There's every chance that you could be tempted to play him ahead of Kehrer as well, right? And then drop Kehrer down to maybe a Neco Williams and just don't need to play this Neco Williams position at all. You could just play Trippier every game week if you do want him to start for this Tottenham away game, right? Because in this team, I'd probably just bench him for this game week, but after that, Trippier just plays every game from 14 onwards, right? And then apart from that, there's also Andreas, who's probably still the best enabler in his price bracket of 4.6 million in the midfield range. And then I've gone for a non-playing forward in Archer as the last option on the bench, right? Because that really allows upgrades elsewhere. And you're at game week 13 now, you don't need to worry too much about, you know, making too many changes or having to rotate too many players, because we're pretty much, you know, kind of on a home run right now. Just 4 game weeks, you're in a really good position, right? So with, you know, banking on all these players that could really, you know, they are regular starters, they could really haul in pretty much almost every game in these 4 game weeks. I don't think there's a need for us to have that backup, you know, third forward option, right? And as I said, Mitrovic will just swap to Solanke in game week 15. So I think this team looks really, really strong. If I was on a game week 13 wildcard, I'd pretty much go very, very similar to this team, right? Those of you who want to tinker around a little bit, right, definitely do so. If you have a little bit more money, you can do some upgrades as well, right? But for now, let's take a look at how the team would shape up in the game weeks moving forward. So what I've basically done is I've put this exact same game week 13 wildcard team into this transfer planner here, right? So as I mentioned, this team is looking really strong for game week 13, right? You've wildcarded. Now we're going to go into game week 14 now, right? And you probably roll this week as well. If I had this team, I'd probably just take Kehrer, who plays Manchester United away, out, right? And then Trippier straight in, right? Don't think there's any need for transfers this week, especially since Arsenal have Nottingham Forest at home, right? Liverpool have Leeds at home, and Man City have Leicester away, right? So good fixtures all around still, right? When it becomes a game week 15, this is when things take a little bit of a turn, right? Tottenham away for Liverpool, and also Chelsea away for Arsenal, right? So what I would do in this game week, as I mentioned, right? Mitrovic, he plays Man City away. I would probably do Mitrovic out to Solanke, right? This is one option, right? But if you're feeling adventurous as well, you could do Martial if he is back fit, right? Martial is an option this week, obviously if he's fit, because Manchester United from game week 15 to 16, right, have an okay run. They have Aston Villa away and Fulham away, right? So that's a decent punt as well, right? But if not, other moves that you can make as well, right, is to play, to take Ben White out, right, and also bring in maybe Dalot, right? So if you don't really fancy Manchester United assets as well, you could go elsewhere, right? You could go for Brighton defenders, because game week 15 and 16, right, Brighton have their fixture run coming a little bit better after just playing City and Chelsea in game week 13 and 14 respectively, right? So you could go for maybe a Lewis Dunk here, and he has decent fixtures, right? Wolves away and then Aston Villa at home, right? So game week 15, you could use these 2 transfers to make these 2 moves, right? And then come into game week 16 now, right? One free transfer is pretty much a safety net for you, because the fixtures are still pretty good everywhere, right? It's just a safety net for you to make any transfers if anyone is injured, right? So the team looks really well set up for these 4 game weeks. I've tinkered around a little bit with a lot of variations of game week 13 wildcards, and I think this one is the most flexible and also the one that allows us to cover a lot of the assets that we want, right? So hopefully this video helps you guys, right? If you did enjoy it, please give it a like and also subscribe as well if you are new around here. We're trying to hit 3,000 subscribers before the World Cup, so it really means a lot if you guys could help me do that. But for now, that's it for this video, and I will catch you guys in another one really soon. Bye-bye.